Yeah, you could tell there's some colleagues in the room. All right. Well, lovely to be here, and thank you for joining me. So I'm going to talk about how we did some co-design as a community in one of the communities that I worked in. My name's Imran Hussain. I'm a community designer at Government Digital Service, which is part of Cabinet Office. Community designer is a role I made up, so if you don't know that will be why. Pretty much every role I've had in community I've kind of made up, and I usually land in a role, I kind of see what they need, and then I'll shape my roles to fit what they kind of need. So at Government Digital Service, I kind of do a bit of everything. So it's constant engagement to get soft user research. If I spot any kind of like themes or problems that are appearing, I will solidify those in my mind. I will take them back to the team, pose them as problems. We'll then discover the problem space officially through user research. I will work with the team to service design a solution and deliver that, and I'm there for the aftercare as well. So right from the start to the finish of the kind of like community, and it's just constantly happening with small problems, larger problems, but yeah, I kind of love it because it does touch on like building a better culture, as Nat has just touched on in her talk. So I'm going to fit my talk into 3 chapters. Number 1 is just setting the scene, putting everything together. Chapter 2 is what I like to call obstacles, schmobstacles. Chapter 3 is talking about the kind of learnings from the whole process, how we kind of iterated and how we improve things as a result. So, chapter 1. So, before gov.uk, the UK government kind of looked like this. There were websites everywhere, hundreds of websites, campaigns, transactions, different things floating around. There were sometimes things that overlapped and were contradicting each other, and it created broken user journeys. Sorry, by the way, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the design system because I don't want to assume any knowledge, but I'll be brief. In 2012, Government Digital Service as a whole worked to take all that disparate information, and which is about 700 websites at the time, and put it into one place, which is now gov.uk, which is how it currently sits. So it's a central place where citizens can go and interact with government, and it's much better user experience. As part of that, the community I work with and the product I work with, the gov.uk design system, is a suite of tools, and it helps people quickly build usable, accessible services that sit on that website, gov.uk. So you can go onto the website and it provides styles, components and patterns to help design and build those user-centered services. So yeah, it's quite helpful. There's more than 900 live services using the gov.uk design system, and it's found in more than, I think that number's updated since I've been doing the slides, it's more than 3,000 repos on GitHub. So that's like, you can't track everyone who uses it, but that's just a finger in the air of how many repos are officially using it. Year to date, so starting from January to June, it saved UK taxpayer £22 million, and that's just in the UK. There's many countries, states, kind of prefectures that fork our design systems. So if you think across the world, it's probably saving many more millions as well. Okay, so that's the kind of background done about the design system. Contribution is a key part of keeping our design system going. And that's because we're an open source kind of design system. And if we want to scale and we want to provide the things that all the designers need, we need people to help us make them, because we're a fairly small size team. So just want to give a shout out to the original innovators. So this is Nasir Orlana and Amy Hugh. And they are two people who are based in our team who created this contribution process, and that is no mean feat, because now anyone from government or the wider public sector can actually contribute to our design system. Everything's open source on GitHub, and corralling all that together and finding a system for it was not easy to do. And essentially, our design system has been doing co-design for over 4 years because of the work that they put in early on. So the way that it was set up was we did a public open backlog where people can go, they can share their ideas, research, works on progress, and it was on GitHub. And there's no access limitations to that, which can often be a challenge for government. But it can be a bit hard for people to use who are not familiar with it. So developers usually use this kind of tool a lot, but other roles maybe not so much. But yes, all of our work that we're kind of doing is really visible on there, which is important for open source. What we also created were some like contribution criteria. So we developed these in conjunction with experts across government, designers and developers, and this gives people an idea of what kind of standards they need to meet or what it needs to do if they want to contribute something. Also set up a working group, so it's got 11 representatives. They're currently from 9 different organisations and 5 different disciplines. And this is just to make sure any decision making is kind of fair and representative. Essentially, like the final decision making and standard setting goes out to this group. So it just means we're not marking our own homework, right? So if something's great, they will let us know. If something's not great, we have to act on their feedback, which is a really great setup and probably the best thing about our design system contribution process. So this is around the time that I entered the organisation. Happy world, everything was going so well. It's ominous, isn't it? Everything's good, right? Sector-wide design system, contributions coming in, should be perfect. No. Obviously, things change, things happen, and one of the things that happened was like our team shrunk to 4 people, which was smaller than the small team that was already kind of running it. Ignacia and Amy, who've done all that fantastic work in setting up the contribution process, moved on to work their magic on other products at GDS and other design systems and make them brilliant as well. Which kind of meant that the engagement that they've been doing, the kind of reaching out to everyone across government and getting them involved, kind of disappeared. And it disappeared for a decent amount of time, kind of 9 to 12 months. So that's a big kind of gap. I think this is a really nice tweet that sums up a lot of the problems that you get with design systems and other kind of products that you set up. It's like, creating it is great, but getting an organisation to adopt it and to maintain it over time, that is the work. And you know, we've stopped being the shiny new thing after a year and a half. And other things started to be worked on, and that's what leadership started to focus on all of a sudden. Also, business needs kind of got in the way. So there was a lot of things that we needed to create for the main site, gov.uk, but then there were a lot of emergencies as well, like Brexit and COVID kind of happened, which obviously gov.uk is the portal for information for all those kind of things. So a lot of the resource from our team kind of got focused on dealing with these urgent issues that were happening in government. So when I came in, I wanted to kind of speak to the community and find out what was happening. I thought, yeah, they'll really be up for speaking to me, but when I kind of got in there, absolutely nothing. No one wanted to speak to me, and I was just like a little bit confused. And it took a while of nitpicking and just kind of keeping asking people, and I kind of found out or got the impression that we'd lost the trust that we built up, right? I thought I was starting from 0, right? I'll start afresh and I'll build it up, but we were below 0 because we'd built up this trust and then the engagement had just stopped. So we'd taken a step backwards. So we had to build back up to 0 so that we could kind of start again. So yeah, that was the challenge that was before me. So some of the first things I did was speak to some of the designers and developers building these services in government. So we did our user research and we gathered some of their thoughts, including those on the contribution process and just engaging with people on the team and the design system in general. So some of the problems that kind of came about were users were concerned that they didn't have enough expertise to contribute. And they saw the people that were contributing right at the top of their game as someone who was like a complete expert, and they were really intimidated to speak about things or offer their suggestions or create things, even things that they created that would be really useful. They were really intimidated to suggest contribution. They would also worry that they would ask something like silly on Slack, like, oh, has someone asked this before? Should I know this already? So they were even intimidated to reach out to the community or the team for help. They also thought that the decision-making process that we used for our product, the design system, was not really clear. So that was like team priorities, but also even someone who's doing a contribution, sometimes they handed something over and they kind of felt like it's gone into the ether for a bit until the team gets back to them a couple of months later. Some users didn't know how to formally contribute, but they assumed there'd be guidance on it somewhere, and if they needed it, they'd go and kind of find it, but they didn't know off the top of their head, which probably wasn't a good sign. And some users also mentioned that they struggled to keep up to date with the changes on the design system and what the team were working on. And just to clarify, when we're talking about users here, we mean designers and developers in government, because they're the ones who use their design system. Overall, especially with the contribution, everything had become a little bit disjointed, and that was especially because the team had got a lot smaller. We had kind of like 4 people at one point in 2020. So the contributor was doing some work, handing it over, it went missing for a while, we were doing some work, we were handing it back. And it kind of felt like, do you know those folded children's stories where you write one line and pass it on to the next person, and then you open it and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever? It was kind of like that. It was really disjointed. It didn't feel how we kind of wanted it to feel. So clearly we kind of needed to make some changes, but the team was quite small. They were kind of at capacity, working on components, patterns, providing support to people, dealing with tech debt as well. So as a community designer, it kind of came down to me, which was intimidating, to try and move the needle on these kind of issues. And there was a lot of work to do. And it was really intimidating. Much of the work was kind of like service design shaped, like we needed to create things, and that wasn't really my role. I kind of dabbled in it, but I was far from a kind of expert, and it was a community of experts, which made it even more kind of intimidating. So some of the best designers and developers in the country, and I just saw all their problems out. So I kind of started to understand that feeling that community members had of being intimidated by to deal with this community. Luckily, I had an awesome mentor. So this is my design mentor, Clara Grillo. If you don't know her, follow her on Twitter, because she's a brilliant lady. And I kind of had some conversations with her, because I was like, am I qualified to lead this? Some of the stuff I want to do, I'm not sure if it should be me that's kind of doing it. And through some conversations, I actually flipped the idea on its head, right? So I changed my perspective completely. And it was that lack of expertise, not being completely at the top of the game, can actually be my superpower. Because if I can lead this community, and I'm not even a designer, then anyone can take part, right? So it's the key kind of takeaway that I had, like through this 1 or 2 conversations with my design mentor, was like, work to your strengths. And my strength is in convening people, getting them excited about work, and bringing them together. And that's what I introduced from there on out. So yeah, crisis of confidence kind of averted, I set about kind of dealing with these problems. Obstacles shot. Okay. So I spoke to some people across government in follow-up conversations just to really dig into the issues and do further research. And then I kind of came up with a bit of a community strategy. And what we aimed to do was to build some trust. Obviously, we needed preparing, and just demonstrate some consistency. So I wanted to show them, like, I'm not going to do this for a little bit and then just disappear after a couple of months, because that's what had happened before. We wanted to create safe space and approachability because people kind of felt intimidated in the space. We want to run exciting events, but also they should add value to someone who kind of attends them. It can't just be exciting and then no one really digs on it. Let's be a bit more open about roadmap and decisions, and actively invite feedback and act on it. And the last thing was, let's make the most of that expertise in the community. So we've got lots of experts. Let's try some structures and sessions that make the most of that. So to start off with, I created some kind of like principles for how our team would engage with the community. So in all our interactions, I wanted everything to feel the same, whether you spoke to me, whether you spoke to one of the developers, or one of the designers on the team, and whatever channel this was, if it was an online conversation or just something on Slack, we wanted to have the same kind of feel to build that consistency. So I created 4 principles. The first one was being open, like transparent about our work, our processes, our decision making, how much feedback we can take on. Inviting. This sounds similar to open, but quite often what happens is people work in the open, they'll broadcast what they're doing, but they don't often take feedback in the other way. And one thing I really wanted us to do was actively encourage people to get involved with our team. So we should be actively encouraging people, invite their feedback, get them involved in sessions, get them involved in conversations, and those decision-making opportunities should be there for our users. The third one was transfer of power. Currently, people felt like they were on the outside looking in, right? They couldn't affect this design system, and as a contribution-based design system, we should be serving their needs a little bit more. So transferring some of that decision-making power so people feel like they've got more skin in the game was absolutely vital. And the last thing was to be a little bit educational. So it's one thing to build something, but if you don't teach people how to use it properly or develop some training, then you're not going to fulfill people using it properly. So we wanted to make sure people had the right skills and takes some of the skills that we had, especially in our team, was taking something that works in one context. So someone will develop something at DWP, they'll bring it to our team, and then now we have to make it apply to every single department, whether it's a small service, large service, whether it's for different types of public sector organisations. And that's something that was a bit of a bottleneck for our team. Only we could do that and no one else could do that in government. So if we could start to spread those skills, we reduce that kind of bottleneck that is stopping our team from achieving more. We started off putting those principles into practice with kind of like face-to-face interactions and interesting events. So I created some spaces where we could kind of engage with the community and allow them to discuss our challenges. And luckily at this point our team started to grow, so we had more people on the team that could jump on board. So we were a bit more open about our work. This is a regular fortnightly chat that we have around the design system and design systems in general. Anyone is free to kind of take part, and after the session we share anonymized notes. So we take notes, we don't put anyone's names or departments or the service they're working on in it, but people are free to share their opinion, and we'll share those great views after the session in case people miss it. We started to get the community more involved in our decisions. So this is a cross-gov crit that we ran before we launched one of our patterns on the design system, which was asking for quality information. Normally, what we'd do before this was we'd launch it, we'd look out for feedback, and then we'd rapidly have to just like fix anything. And it just made sense to go out to people and get that feedback before we launch the thing, be able to take those opinions and attitudes and gaps that we've got into account before we launch the final thing. And yeah, I think it's made our products more robust. We also run an annual conference to celebrate the design system's birthday. So we usually announce it on our birthday in June, and then we'll do it a couple of months later. It's happening in October this year. And this is just like a focal point. So over summer, usually you get a bit of a lull, people go on holiday, and you know, when you're doing collaboration type of work, this is a real chance after summer to kind of like pick people up, get them interested in our kind of work again, and just engage them again. So this is really serving the community. In our first session, first design system day, we had like some really interesting workshops, like this one on contrast modes, taking components through accessibility. We had loads of breakout rooms on different types of discussions around design systems, and we had a great keynote talk from Sarah Drummond, who was at SMIC at the time. We've also thought about comms, because the way we communicate is really, really important for the kind of design system. What has this got to do with code design? If people don't know you're doing code design, there's no way they can kind of take part. So actually, communicating was absolutely vital. And one of the things we kind of realized was different people interact with the design system in different ways. So we had different personas, but there were people who were like super users that interacted with us all the time. And for those kind of people, we had weekly engagement. So this fortnightly call was weekly at one point. Now we've got many events, so we've turned it to fortnightly. And we also have constant engagement on Slack, and our support offer is on Slack. So if people want to engage more often, they can. For people who just want to keep a loose eye on the design system, we've got like a mailing list. So rather than have to chase us up and find out what's going on, they get a ping to their inbox. For people who just want a loose idea of what's going on, we kind of blog on the Design Notes blog, which is a government blog, and it kind of lets people know what direction we're headed in, if we're making any major changes. And then a thing we're increasingly starting to do is add a bit of personality, because like we're central government and it's quite dry. But our team is absolutely brilliant, and there's loads of work that kind of goes on behind the scenes that people don't get to see. Like there's members of our team that will contact Mozilla and Google and try and change the way they use their browsers so our components work better, and that's the kind of thing you never get to find out. So we're encouraging our team to write like more personal blogs, even if it's 2 to 3 paragraphs, just to kind of let you know some of the extent that we go to and some of that work that you never get to see. So it's kind of behind the scenes stories. Which leads me on to co-design projects. Okay? So I've been talking for a while, so at this point I thought I'd take a short break and give you a chance to speak to someone next to you or around you or behind you. So I'm going to give you a minute or two and just give you this question. What does co-design or co-creation mean to you? So if you turn around to someone next to you, start having a chat. Thank you, appreciate it. Does anyone want to come in on what they kind of discussed? Anyone? Yeah?
We talked a bit about sort of with users. I think we were more sort of talking around sort of service design. So perhaps leaning a bit on that talk that happened earlier about sort of that design for the 20%. So bringing those disadvantaged users together and sort of working with them to deliver services. But we also spoke about it in the design aspect of bringing lots of designers together from different areas and different views, like you've done, to try and build something that's more substantial, that's going to last a bit longer, a bit more sustainable, that kind of thing.
All right, that's fantastic. Yeah, bringing users more into the fold, bringing more designers and more perspectives in, which is a fantastic answer. Anyone else want to come in? Yeah.
I'll just add to that, say, such a big part is that not necessarily just designers, people who might not necessarily think themselves as designers.
Yeah.
So, like working with various business, the sessions that we've had where we sort of co-created content, but we've not dressed it up as a design session. It's people who might be an expert in products, but they might be qualified the word design, think I'm not design. But it's more about just getting everyone involved, rather than not necessarily designers.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting more people involved and different perspectives. And it's kind of what we try to do with our working group actually, because our community is more designers and developers. But the next iteration of our working group, we've got, like digital leaders involved, content professionals, and it brings that different perspective. So yeah, I completely agree. Co-design, you can find definitions online. I think everyone roughly knows what it feels like, but it definitely can be a spectrum, right? You can have co-design in one instance, and your limitations can be based on your organization and the service that you're working within. It might be the chance that you get is just to run a few extra user research sessions. Or you can go right to the other end of the spectrum, which is where the users are actually designing for you. And that really depends on what context you're working in, okay? Now with me, it was a community, right? There's no budget here. I was the budget, my kind of role, so there's no money at stake. I have a bunch of experts, so the idea was let's push this thing as far as we can go along that spectrum and see what happens. Yeah? I didn't know if it would work. It was definitely an experiment, but this is what kind of happened. So generally, I wanted the community to have more of a say of what's going on. And it was definitely stepping out of my comfort zone. As you know, I'm a community person and not a designer. And leading that community was already intimidating, but when you're leading something that's online, open source, collaborative, co-design during a pandemic, that's kind of seems really implausible, and there was a lot of kind of complexity, and I was definitely feeling it. But what we wanted to do was create an alternative way for people to get something into the design system, because currently what was happening at the time was the team decided what went into the design system. So we did have this backlog that we'd done 2-3 years ago, but there were also those kind of business needs coming in, and COVID was happening, so a lot of resource was kind of taken to making sure Gov.uk is doing its job, which is obviously really important. But then this community that's contributing to it is not being served, so this was the opportunity to address that concern and balance things out a little bit, and we created something where we could cut the team out as much as possible. So the team is not a blocker to us doing this kind of collaboration, which put it all on me, but it just meant that it doesn't matter what's happening within the team, the community can focus on doing the things that they want to do. So this was the component that we worked on. It was called the task list. It's a component that people use when a citizen can't complete a transaction in one sitting. So if you go to a service and it's going to be really long, you might see section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4. That's the task list component, and that's just to let the citizen know, hey, this is going to be a long process, this is where you are in the journey, and this is how much more you've got kind of left to do, and maybe you can take a break in between the sections if you need to. So the community decided to make this a priority themselves. I did not choose it. This came up in conversation several times, and I pitched it like, shall we do something about this? And people were like, yeah. So I kind of helped bring them together. That's what I saw as my role. Overall, like 400 designers, developers, digital people who are just interested in this kind of collaboration came together. It was over 150 organizations that have been put into this, and we're very grateful. And we've all designed these kind of components. The work for this happened mostly in workshops. And that was a conscious decision because not everyone's available in between these workshop times. And we wanted to be inclusive. We wanted as many perspectives as we could kind of get. and we didn't want to cut people out. So I ran 2 workshops. The first 2 workshops were kind of like scene setting. So we talked about what people's interest was in task list in the first one. And as a community, we kind of gathered our needs, like what are our usability needs, what are our accessibility needs from this kind of component, what are the needs of the end users that they're trying to serve in the community. And then the community affinity mapped all those needs and kind of put them into groups, which you can see a picture of in that board. In the second workshop, as a community, we were kind of like deciding the scope of the component and what we're going to kind of build as our minimum viable product. So what features go into it, what features do we kind of cut out so it doesn't get too complex. So there was a lot of challenges to overcome, and each workshop was bespoke. It had its own kind of set of goals, its own kind of challenges. So we have to design together, we have to be online. There were people from all around the world that joined, and I was super, super chuffed. And it was during a pandemic, and everyone uses different platforms in their organisation, so how do we kind of deal with that? So I wanted to remain open, accessible, collaborative, but it wasn't that easy to be agnostic of all those things. After those sessions, I did probably the most complicated session, which was a 4-hour design-a-thon. So it's kind of a bit like a hackathon, where we're kind of coming up with design ideas and wireframes. And it was online, so logistically it took a bit of work through different platforms. But what we ended up doing was pitching for time, voting on the most useful ideas in groups, and then we created ideas for prototypes based on the ideas that got the most votes. It was a lot of mental work. And I was definitely still kind of feeling the pressure as a non-designer, especially leading design sessions like a design-a-thon. So we set up a steering group to help make key decisions. So they started to help decide what went into those sessions. I kind of tried to coach them over time to take more control of the project. And that was purposeful because I wanted the community to be making the decisions and not really for me to be kind of driving it. So they ended up presenting part of the sessions as well, they ran breakout groups, and they kept work kind of and momentum going in between these sessions that ended up being like 2 months apart sometimes. Got Steve from Nexa was a part of that steering group, and he did a thoroughly good job. So in this context, the idea for me was I'm just kind of facilitating this collaboration. I'm handing over as much control as I can, as possible, to the kind of community to kind of run it. We did have an early success from that design-a-thon. As one of the ideas, we updated some guidance on the task list as it stood on the design system. So before we even built anything, we'd updated and added a section to the guidance. So it was a really good early win from all these people that were kind of getting together and pitching in their ideas. So, hopes and reality. What were my hopes and what actually happened? Okay, so I hoped that the interesting events kept the community engaged and we draw a wider audience because we're doing exciting online things that people don't do. Also, I was hoping by there being such a large group from different organizations, as we go through designing this thing, people start to understand that contributions process, and that encourages them to contribute more often. We were also hoping, like, if we can do this more often, like, more contributions will go into the design system. So you've got the team over there pottering away on day-to-day work, and you've got the community over here, like, building the stuff that they want. This particular task list, by the way, was number 72 out of 100 on the list. So this wouldn't have happened probably for a couple of years if the community didn't step up and decide to do this. And obviously, I wanted people to learn from each other. So, like, you've got all these experts in the room, like, by working together, they're starting to pick up on each other's skills. And by the way, all of this did happen, so I was really, really happy. But there were some other things as well. In reality, it was really difficult to do. So I was treading new ground. I tried to speak to a lot of people, but I didn't know anyone who'd done this before. So like literally everything is bespoke. You have to create a new way of doing things. So it's like inventing the double diamond every time you want to design a service or run a workshop. So yeah, it took a lot of mental energy to organise, and yeah, that's why we created that steering group to help. We wanted to invite new views all the time, so I didn't block anyone from attending the sessions. Anyone could turn up, even halfway through the collaboration. But then it took up time in workshops to get these people up to speed. Here's what's happened so far, here's what we're looking to do in this session. And a lot needed to happen in that workshop, because it's been 2 months since the last one. So it's like, how do you balance catching people up with making sure we get enough work done? Yeah, as I said, had to get through a lot of work, and there were 90-minute workshops, so it was a lot of pressure on that kind of time. And as time kind of grew on, I was coaching that steering group, and they were getting more and more involved. But increasingly, I kind of felt like I was teaching them collaboration skills and giving them more control, but I'm not using them to their potential. We've got some of the most expert designers probably in the world with this kind of stuff, and I'm getting them to do admin. it didn't sit right with me. And then I remembered my mentor's advice, like, work to your strengths, right? I should be getting this steering group, this expert panel to be working to their strengths, and I should be working to mine. I did take on a lot throughout this. I became a community lead, a project manager for this particular component, the delivery manager, and the workshop lead during the collaboration. So there's a lot of things kind of going on. I really enjoyed it. I probably wouldn't do it exactly the same again. And also I became a singular point of contact for more information. So it was like, hey, I want to join the co-design, go speak to Imran. Try to it, like, I was more than happy to, people want to get involved. Try doing that 300 times. It takes its toll, and it takes up a lot of time when you want to be planning the next workshop. I'm also bad at saying no to exciting work. So I created another co-design project, and it's because people saw exciting work happening and they wanted to do other stuff. And this is not the remit of the design system, but it's not the remit of other things either. There was no one working on this, and there were people passionate, willing to pour their time into it. So I was like, fuck it, let's do it. That was literally it. So we kept hearing about it, we decided to do something about it. What we're trying to do as part of this collaboration, which is a lot less far on, is make maps more consistent for the public sector. In the first workshop, we had over 90 people from across the public sector. A lot of them are like map experts. We had like a show and tell from DEFRA about the maps work that they've done. And then we collected some kind of user needs from the group in terms of what do you want from this collaboration. I put together a steering group for that to plan the next steps. That steering group's grown to like over 20 people now, which is amazing. They're all different maps experts. We then ran a fun session where we looked for lots of examples in maps best practice, and we started to analyse it. What can we get from the way maps are done well in other places? That's something from that session. It had such a wide remit, making maps better. It's intimidating, but it was also an open goal. So we set a short-term goal, which for us is we're going to create a set of map design principles. So once we create these principles and kind of spread them across the public sector, then we can build specific things that people use that align with these principles that we've kind of set. Again, there's no real best practice. How do you create a set of design principles for an entire sector? I don't know. I tried to speak to people. There's very few people that have kind of done it. So fail fast, trial it, test it, iterate it, hope we do well. And if we don't, let's make it better next time around. So the whole process, learning, iterating, and improving. Here's how we refined those co-design projects. So we designed a community landing page. So instead of people just coming to me, They can get information about the project and what's happening through here. They can get straight onto the Slack channels, ask people what's going on. There's no blocker by having this single point of contact that is Imran. I created a briefing for each co-design project as well, so when people enter those Slack channels or start asking, they can read this, they get a bit of an update on what happened in each workshop, and it's got all the links to all the boards. So if we collected user needs, they can go have a look at what people kind of came up with, and even add their own things to that board. We did some more targeted work as well in between those workshops. So we had these big workshops where the whole community took part, but then the steering group did smaller workshops. So here we developed a prototype and we're writing some guidance. So the first draft of the guidance was written by the smaller group, but then we'll take it to the larger community to read through it and see if they agree, see if anything needs adding. So in doing so, we started to use the skills of those collaborators to the full extent. And one of the things we did was create a prototype. So the designers and developers created this prototype, which has now been tested with users in a few different departments. It's also been through our governance process and will be added to the design system anytime now. The collaborations had a knock-on effect on some other components as well. So this kind of status that we used, which Steve worked on, ended up having a knock-on impact, because when the working group saw it, they said, that's better than the current design. So we've ended up actually updating the second component. So the collaboration is carried on and ended up working on the tag component and updating that as well. There's lots of kind of work that went into the color contrast, making it more accessible, using sentence case so it's more accessible to people with neurodiversity as well. And this is also having an impact on some other things, like this is a phase banner that we use at the top of our service, and because it's got a tag in it, the visual change is going to be reflected in several places across different services, and this will be rolled out soon. So we created one component, but actually we made several components better throughout this collaboration, and that will end up going out to kind of millions of users pretty soon. So what did I learn from the process? First of all, co-design is community work. So if you're doing co-design, you need to be building community. You kind of need to show that you care about people's needs, and you need to build that trust and relationship if you really want them to contribute in a meaningful way. And you build that trust over time by being there, being consistent. And I kind of feel personally there's a responsibility if you're doing co-design as well. It's not about using people while you need them and then just dropping them. There needs to be an ongoing relationship once you've completed that first phase of work. Because you want to maintain that trust and you want to keep making whatever you created together better. You can definitely try to do too much. So this collaboration took 2 years, and that's because we were trying to do education, we were trying to make it fun, we were trying to have a steering group that I kind of coached and helped them make decisions and deliver part of the sessions. I could have delivered this quicker if I wanted to. So this is not, we had no budget, we had no strict time frame. That's the reason that we did it to that kind of extent. And we achieved all our goals, but if I was to do it again, I think I'd restrict the scope and definitely try and deliver it in a more timely manner. Said this several times, use the people that you have to their strengths. Find out what they're good at and try and get them involved at doing those things that are within their area of comfort, and it will benefit the whole collaboration. And also kind of stick to a set of core values. So everything we did was values-based. How do we want the design system and its community to feel? And that permeated throughout every workshop, through every interaction that we had with thousands of people across these kind of 2 years. So what is the team takeaway? It's kind of affected our team and our team culture, because if you want to have an open source mentality, you kind of need the people that are also going to deliver it. So we start to do things slightly differently on our team. So we're more open about our work. We've got like a backlog of all these blogs that we're kind of writing, and we're trying to blog more frequently, even if it is just those like 3 or 4 paragraph blogs. We engage more on Slack as well. We share our roadmap more openly. You can just go onto our site and check that out and find out what we've shipped and what's coming up. We've also designed a page to encourage discussion around what's coming up. So before you went onto GitHub, there's like 100 things and you were a bit lost. So here it's like, here's our next 3 things we're working on. Get involved in the discussion. Do you want to kind of be involved when we start building this? And that's your opportunity to let us know. We're also updating our regular contribution process based on what we've learned from the co-design. And it's not doing engagement for engagement's sake, it's what parts of that co-design really add value to our regular kind of contribution process. So everything's quite pragmatic. So the principles are like, we'll work on things that are valuable to lots of teams, we'll involve larger, more diverse group of people. Contributors will be clearer about what's happening, and hopefully by getting people involved, we'll spot problems earlier. So yeah, we've got many more touch points with our users. This is going to be an expedited process of what I do. So we're hoping this takes like between 6 and 9 months rather than the kind of 2 years and all the bits that I did as well. And my colleague, Chris Valentine-Thomas, actually wrote a blog about this, and he created a video to explain the contribution process. So we're trying to get that communication out there and put it into different formats so people can understand our contribution process more easily. So the next step will be choosing one of our prioritized things and trialing the model. That's it for me. Thank you.